There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. This episode is sponsored by Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. We are here today with Kate Moore. She is the VP of Marketing at LeanKit. Kate, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am fantastic. So, Kate, we're going to be talking about getting started with Agile marketing today. But before we do that, I want to explain to listeners just really why you're the person to be talking about this. Could you explain to us what LeanKit is and what you and your team are up to up there?
Sure. Good question. So at LeanKit, we are a visual Kanban board. It's hosted digitally, and it allows your teams to visualize your work and connect work in a way that makes sense for your business.
Love it.
For me personally, we sort of try to eat our own dog food, if you will, on practicing Kanban and Lean. And so while we mostly serve large enterprise customers, our marketing team of about 20 practices Agile marketing in the tech space, and we've seen some great results. So that's really more sharing about what we're doing internally than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys have about a 20-person marketing team. Could you share kind of before we get into kind of we're going to talk about 3 specific things that folks can do to get started with Agile marketing, but can you talk about kind of some of since you guys practice it yourself, can you speak firsthand to like the benefits of doing this as opposed to kind of other approaches that other marketing teams tend to take?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest benefits are really getting work done faster, optimizing your team to be sure that you're working on the right work, right? So there's a prioritization component to it. I think there's also a strong cultural component. Our team is closer, and we have the ability to manage conflict better, I would say, than most traditional marketing teams that may have hidden work or siloed work. Right. I was once on a larger scale demand generation team, and we didn't really know what was happening over in marketing ops. And so we at LeanKit did our best to break down those silos, even though 20 people is a lot of people. Each sub team knows what's going on, because to get really any work out the door from a marketing perspective these days, it takes a village. So it takes people from all different departments getting together to complete the work. And so understanding what those other teams are up to is an important part of being able to get the work done faster.
All right. So the first piece we're going to talk about, Kate, is really, as we were talking about it offline, more around kind of the mindset and as folks start to approach kind of an agile approach to their marketing, it's this idea of getting feedback faster, and the quicker that you can get work out the door, the more you can get feedback on it and then iterate according to what customers and potential customers want. And so you can do more of what's working as opposed to spending a lot of time on something that ultimately isn't hitting the mark. So can you really unpack that for us so that the folks are kind of in the right mindset as they go to approach Agile marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a good question. I think it's particularly hard for marketers to approach an Agile way of marketing, because we all want to make a good first impression, right? So the idea that you only have one chance to make a first impression is true. I think we can spin ourselves a little bit in circles trying to make a campaign or a blog post or what have you perfect before we get it out the door. And in reality, it's our idea of perfect, right? It's not necessarily our customer or our prospect's idea of perfect. And while we know a ton about our customers and our prospects, and we know what kind of value we can provide to them, there are things we don't know, right? Things change over time. People like to be interacted with differently, what have you. And so the ability to move faster and get feedback faster really enables the concept of putting out stuff that is, solely about your customer and not necessarily about our own connotations of what we think our customers need. So that's really what that is. It's a hard thing, right? It's also a really humbling thing. I think I know a lot about my customers, right? But oftentimes, when we put something out there, we specifically have a hypothesis about what we think we'll learn from it. And I'm wrong a lot. And it shows, right? It shows that you need to do what you can to start small, get something out there, and see how it resonates to know whether or not you kind of got it right.
Yeah. So Kate, does that mean, obviously the context of marketing, a lot of marketers listening to this, does that mean getting a blog post out about a certain topic because that it's, your team has a 7-day turn time? It typically takes 7 days to get a blog post out, as opposed to saying, hey, we're going to put out an ebook or we're going to produce a webinar series, because that those initiatives tend to take, a month or 45 days. And so getting the blog post out first, means you can get it turned around in 7. And then based on the feedback you get from that piece of content, then determining whether you're going to turn it into a larger asset. Is that kind of how it shakes out from really practically, or am I thinking about that wrong?
No, that's a good example. I would even go further than that, right? What is the concept you want to write about? You want that piece of content to be, and what do you think you're going to learn from feedback from that piece of content? And then, because in some instances, right, you should put out an ebook, right? Or you should put out a infographic that is really well designed, right? And takes longer, but you don't know that until you know whether or not the topic even resonates, right? So you can even think smaller about it. Maybe it's a LinkedIn post, or, a Twitter post or something like that.
All right. I want to tell you a little story about Clear Company. This HR tech company was doing a lot of things right. Their messaging was clear, their product produced incredible results, but they were struggling to drive qualified traffic to their website. Then they found Directive Consulting, a B2B search marketing agency. Within the first 12 months of working with Directive, Clear Company was able to increase their qualified lead volume by 157%. Now, I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
I've also heard of people running micro Google AdWords campaigns to see how much something is clicked on, and it runs to a landing page that says, hey, we're working on this right now, sign up here and you'll be one of the first ones to get it. I've heard of people doing that when it comes to kind of coming up with product ideas, but I think it could absolutely translate into content as well, and could give you an idea of kind of what the search volume is for that kind of topic as well.
I was going to say that's a great point. I've heard of people, it's expensive, but I think you get feedback faster, right? If there's a specific term that is for instance, for us, Kanban is a huge search term that we know works, right? But let's say we didn't know it worked. We could buy out for, call it a month, all of the search volume around that term. It's incredibly expensive, right? But you learn quickly whether or not your message resonated against another message. Now, there's all kinds of other factors, seasonality, blah, 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 right? But you put something out there quickly, you got a large audience, and so you learned faster.
With the understanding of knowing that kind of the end result of this is we're trying to shoot for getting feedback faster. The next piece we're going to talk about, Kate, is this idea of visualizing your work. And this is something, I feel like is so easy to miss, because it's okay, well, Sally does this and Bob does this, but it's not visualized anywhere. Obviously, this is something you guys do. Your tool does this, but talk about the importance at a high level of like why visualizing your work is so important if you're trying to go about it in an agile way.
That's such a good question. It is the first and foremost the single step to get right before you practice. You create an agile marketing team, right? So creating a board, no matter what it is, if it's a whiteboard, a chalkboard, a digital board, what have you, get in the habit of having everyone on your team post sticky notes to that board with whatever work item, big or small, they're working on, because you see how prioritization decisions are happening in their own minds, right? Like if your teams aren't visualizing work, as managers, how do you know really what they're working on? And how do they know what each other is working on, right? That's the most important piece. If you're trying to get a campaign out the door, the designer might not know that need for a new banner is coming down the pike, right? But if he knows that you're working on a new campaign, he can probably gather, well, every campaign we do has a banner. So, I know that's coming, that work is coming. There's so many benefits to visualizing your work, but I would say the biggest one is you realize just how much work you're trying to do, right? We all have limited resources with limited people. How do you know what is the best work to work on when? It's a mouthful, but if you can see how much work you're trying to get done, you can better prioritize. And that's really the value. If you can prioritize work, then the work behind your biggest hypotheses or where you need the most feedback, you can prioritize that work over other work.
Got it. Okay. So we've talked about getting feedback faster. We've talked about the absolute necessity of visualizing your work, having some sort of system, whether it's LeanKit or, another tool to do that, but make sure that you're visualizing your work. And then this third piece we're going to talk about, Kate, is limiting your work in progress. Talk to us about the importance of this one.
Yeah. So, let's say you take, you've got, call it 4 people on a marketing team, right? And those 4 people put a sticky note for every work item that they have, on their plate, whether they've started it or they're, it's planned work, like they're getting ready to do it, or, oh my gosh, Marketo's down and we need to, do something to get it back up, right? Sort of unplanned work. Every time there's a new piece of work that comes up, visualize it on a sticky note. You realize how much work you're doing. You can then limit your work in progress. So it sounds counterintuitive, right? So if I limit the work that I'm trying to do, I get more done faster. But it's actually the case. When you focus on one item, right? If you start that item and you bring it to completion, you'll finish it faster than trying to do 2 or 3 things in that same time, right? Because if you're trying to do 2 or 3 things at once, you're context switching between those items. And, you can't limit all of it, right? But if you're aware of it and you're aware that when you put something down, when it's not completed, to pick something else up, it's going to take you longer to complete both items. It gives you just this sense of, I do want to work faster, right? I do want to work on the right things or the most important things. Then it helps you to, be happier in your job. That sounds like a crazy thing, right? That something like it could make you happier, but it does. It also, if you're working on a team board, right, and you limit your team's work in progress, the team is happier. The team is able to huddle around, one big campaign, let's say, right? And they're able to have conversations about what the most important aspects of that campaign are. They're able to prioritize within that campaign. They're able to put down all the other noise of all the other to-do things that they have on their lists or hidden work that no one knows about, right? They're able to take that mental capacity and apply it to the stuff they really love doing, like a campaign or a particular aspect of a campaign.
I love it. Kate, you've given us some really practical things to look at as we're start to embark on really implementing an agile marketing methodology. If there's somebody listening to this, they want to stay connected with you, they want to learn more about LeanKit, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn under Kate O'Neill Moore. That's probably the best way to get at me. Or you can always email me at morekate with a K, the number 6 at gmail.com.
Awesome, Kate. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fantastic, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.